Throughout history, there were many execution methods used which were brutal and barbaric, and aimed to bring immense pain and suffering to someone before their death. In England, they utilised hanging, drawing and quartering, but in European nations they liked to use something known as the breaking wheel. This device was literally a wheel in which someone was strapped to, and they then had their limbs and bones shattered by executioners, who smashed them with clubs and weapons. It was a brutal ordeal, and even shortly before the French Revolution, when the guillotine was brought in, this device was not actually popular, as it was seen as too clinical, with the French people preferring to see methods such as the brutal breaking wheel, as it was more harrowing. One man who was executed on this was a Swedish Livonian politician, whose death ordeal was brutal. Today we look at the execution of Johann Patkul. To support our channel, please make sure to subscribe. Johann Patkul was actually born in prison where his father was locked up for treason, and as a young man he became a soldier of the Swedish army. He was promoted in the military, and he then became known to King Charles XI of Sweden. He was eloquent and well spoken, and he did protest about a land recovery project, but was then considered a traitor to the king, and he then fled to Switzerland to save his life. He was condemned to death whilst he was away, to lose his right hand and also his head, and his estates and land were taken. He then in exile spent 4 years living poorly, and he asked for a pardon, but he then approached the Saxony and Polish government to propose the partition of Sweden. Military operations against the Baltic provinces, looked after by the Swedish, took place, and Patkul then went to Moscow and persuaded Peter the Great to get involved. He was a master manipulator and schemer, but he brought the alliance of Narva between the Russian and Polish Republic, but failed to bring Prussia into the anti-Swedish League. Johann Patkul was arrested on the 18th of December 1705 at Sonnenstein Fortress, and he was then inside of Poland to be executed on the breaking wheel. This execution method had a number of steps. Firstly, the victim was tied on the wheel, and they were secured to it, and the body would then be battered and smashed with clubs and weapons, and the intention was to break the limbs of the condemned. The ordeal would go on for a while, and sometimes it took place on a mast or a pole high up in the air, and sometimes even a fire was lit under the wheel. After the bones of the victim were broken, then the head would be taken clean off. The ordeal was brutal, and often the remains were left out in the air, and birds and animals would then scavenge the remains of the condemned. Johann Patkul was strapped to the breaking wheel on the 10th of October 1707, and a couple of executioners then got to work, bringing about his brutal death. He was battered and brutalised, with his limbs being shattered by the executioners' clubs raining down blow after blow. Patkul was in immense pain, and there was a huge crowd gathered to witness this. He begged for his life to be taken and be over quickly, and at some point he managed to actually roll off the wheel, and then crawl over towards the low block, where his head would be placed for the axe to be swung down upon his neck. He rested his head on the block, and begged for the executioner to swing his axe. This did then take place, but it took many swings to take his head off, and finally Johann Patkul was executed and killed. The breaking wheel throughout history would take the lives of many different people, and Johann Patkul was one of these. He was involved in secret diplomacy across Europe, following being forced out of Sweden for opposing the king, who had already sentenced him to death. Thanks for watching. To support our channel, please make sure to subscribe, and once again, thank you so much for watching.